ideas are and where they would take Libya in a post-Gaddafi future.
Deciding if the U.S. wants to help, at the same time predicting it might already be too late.
And we can go to Patty live. Patty, those comments by Clapper, how did they go down in the White House?
Well, you have to imagine that the president isn't happy, although his aides are saying that the president is still very much happy with Director Clapper. But I can tell you that they had a conference call with reporters that wasn't scheduled this afternoon with the president's national security advisor, and he tried to explain it away this way, saying that Clapper was making a static assessment, that if you were looking at just the numbers of tanks and the weapons, you could come to that conclusion. But if you looked at a quote-unquote dynamic assessment, such as the motivation of the rebels and the isolation of Gaddafi, well, you could come to a totally different conclusion. But Director Clapper also said that he didn't think Gaddafi was going to go anywhere, that he was holed in it for the long term. So if you keep in mind what the Obama administration's entire strategy has been, is to try and isolate Colonel Gaddafi, to get to the people in his inner circle, to send them the message that he's going to lose, you have to wonder how happy they are when their Director of National Intelligence tells the world that that might not happen. In fact, he doesn't think it's going to.
Okay, we've also heard that the U.S. is going to step up its humanitarian mission. What are they going to do?
Well, we do know today we found out that they're going to be sending in humanitarian teams into eastern Libya. Now, we're told that they couldn't be confused as having any sort of military contingent. They will not have any sort of military incursion. It'll just be humanitarian teams going into eastern Libya to make an assessment, and they say they are doing so with the permission of the de facto government.
Thank you for that, Patty Culhane. Well, U.S. stocks have plunged by more than 200 points. That's a fall of nearly 2%. And the Dow Jones Industrial Average has fallen below the 12,000 mark. It is the biggest drop in a single day since August. The drop comes amid the uncertainty in the Middle East, including the unrest in Saudi Arabia. For more on that, let's cross back to Sami in Doha. Sami?
Well, reports from Saudi Arabia say police there have opened fire on protesters, wounding at least 3 men. Well, according to a witness in the eastern city of Qatif, gunshots and stun grenades were fired at around 700 protesters, including women, on Thursday night. Well, the city's been the scene of several protests over the last 2 weeks. These images were uploaded to a social media website and appear to show a group of mainly Shia Saudis rallying on Wednesday night. Well, they're calling for political reform in the kingdom and for the release of 9 political prisoners. Cyber activists have called for a day of rage on Friday. The Saudi government says it will not tolerate any demonstrations. Yemen's opposition has rejected President Saleh's offer to create a parliamentary system. It also promised to prepare a constitution for referendum by the end of the year. But opposition members see this more as an attempt to hold on to power rather than a genuine call for change. Hashim Ahlabara reports now from Sana'a.
It's a parliamentary promise aimed at ending Yemen's long-running political stalemate. But it's already received a rough response.
A committee will be formed to draft a new constitution based on separation powers. A referendum on the changes will be held by the end of this year. 2, we will move to a parliamentary system where all the executive powers will be transferred to the government, which will be elected by the parliament by the end of 2011. We will also put in place a decentralized political and administrative system.
The proposals follow previous concessions, including a pledge by the president to stand down in 2 years. Those too were rejected. But President Saleh's advisors stressed the historic nature of what's on offer.
I think this is an unprecedented announcement, and it's unique almost in the Arab world that the presidential system existing today will become a parliamentary system, where the Prime Minister, who is elected by the people, will become the executive authority, and he will become 100% responsible to Parliament and all actions he does.
That didn't impress Yemen's opposition parties, who still insist on the president's immediate resignation.
The president's statement is merely empty words in an attempt to escape the crisis. We call on the president to come up with an initiative defining his view of the so-called peaceful transition in order for him to leave.
So the daily protests in Sanaa's University Square are likely to continue. The demonstrators believe President Saleh's downfall is just a matter of time. The president says he's offering radical reforms. The opposition says it's just a publicity stunt. Each is holding out for its own brand of democratic change. But many fear the politically volatile Yemen may descend into anarchy. Hashim Ahbar, AlJazeera, Sana'a.
An arrest warrant has been issued for Tunisia's former Interior Minister Rafiq Belhaj Qasim on charges of murder. That's according to the state news agency. Qasim was Interior Minister during the popular uprising that ousted President Ben Ali in January. He's accused of being complicit in the killings of scores of protesters and has been in police custody since February. Hundreds of students in Bahrain are keeping up the pressure on their leadership to make swift democratic reforms. They've been marching to Pearl Square in Manama, the focal point of anti-government demonstrations. They complain of discrimination by Sunni leaders against the majority Shia population. Well, Alassane Ouattara says the African Union has endorsed him as the rightful leader of Côte d'Ivoire. He made the declaration at an African Union summit taking place in Ethiopia. It's the first time Ouattara has left Côte d'Ivoire since the political standoff began. Incumbent President Laurent Gbagbo has imposed a no-fly zone, but the UN vowed to ignore the order and continue its flights. Aid agencies report that 450,000 people have been displaced by conflict since last year's disputed elections. Well, Côte d'Ivoire's economy is suffering heavily from the deadlock, in particular the country's lucrative cocoa industry. The export of almost 500,000 tons of cocoa beans has been held up. Well, now the country's cocoa board has ordered producers to get back to work. Mohamed Ado has more.
The Côte d'Ivoire's economy largely depends on its cocoa crop. But the farmers who will soon be gathering that precious harvest say they're now victims of the political battle engulfing their country. As the presidential face-off between Laurent Gbagbo and Alassane Ouattara goes on, each is issuing different orders to the farmers, and they're getting fed up.
Life is becoming more and more miserable for us farmers. Both Gbagbo and Ouattara should leave and let someone with a conscience take over the country's leadership.
Cocoa has been his family's main income for more than 30 years.
All the former leaders of the cocoa sector are in jail, and Gbagbo has appointed his own. And now he has nationalized the sector. This is because he knows it's profitable and can get him money.
The ongoing political crisis in Ivory Coast threatens the country's status as being the world's top producer of cocoa. And now farmers are complaining that it's no longer profitable to grow cocoa as illegal cartels take advantage of the situation to take their crop at throwaway prices. Alou Bile is a trader in the small town of Ara in the eastern part of Côte d'Ivoire. He says he hasn't sold any cocoa for the last 2 months.
Every morning, farmers come to me for payment. I have no money to pay them. If the situation remains the same, it will be unbearable for us.
European Union